Chapter 1: The Billionaire Who Studies the Antichrist. When people hear the name Peter Thiel, they usually think of Silicon Valley billion-dollar investments and some of the most influential technology companies in the world. As the co-founder of PayPal, an early investor in Facebook, and the chairman of Palantir, Thiel has helped shape the modern digital age. His influence extends across artificial intelligence, defense technology, venture capital, and American politics. But there is another side of Peter Thiel that few people know. For more than a decade, Thiel has been publicly exploring one of the Bible's most mysterious and controversial figures, the Antichrist. Through essays, public conversations, conferences, and an entire lecture series devoted to the subject, he has argued that ancient biblical prophecy may offer profound insight into the greatest challenges facing the modern world. This isn't simply a billionaire expressing a personal religious belief. According to Thiel's own public statements, questions surrounding artificial intelligence, nuclear weapons, pandemics, technological stagnation, and global governance are all connected to a much older question: how civilizations respond to the fear of catastrophe. He argues that throughout history, humanity has often been willing to surrender freedom in exchange for security, and that this pattern may be the key to understanding the biblical idea of the Antichrist. These ideas have sparked intense debate. Supporters see Thiel as one of the few technology leaders willing to confront the ethical and spiritual consequences of artificial intelligence and centralized power. Critics argue that his interpretation of prophecy has become deeply intertwined with his views on politics, technology, and the future of civilization. Some online commentators have even speculated about Thiel himself. But speculation is not evidence, and that is not the purpose of this documentary. Instead, we're going to examine Peter Thiel's own words, trace the origins of his ideas, and explore why one of the world's most influential technology investors believes the concept of the Antichrist is more relevant today than at any other point in modern history. To understand how Peter Thiel connects biblical prophecy to artificial intelligence, global power, and the future of civilization, we first have to understand the philosopher who transformed his worldview. His name was René Girard. Chapter 2: The Philosopher Behind Peter Thiel. René Girard wasn't a politician, a billionaire, or a technology entrepreneur. He was a French historian, literary critic, and philosopher whose ideas about human nature would eventually influence one of the most powerful minds in Silicon Valley. At the center of Girard's work was a simple but unsettling claim: human beings don't simply choose what they desire. We learn what to desire by watching other people. If someone else wants something, we begin wanting it too. Soon, two people are competing for the same object. Competition becomes envy. Envy becomes rivalry. Rivalry eventually becomes conflict. Girard called this mimetic desire, the idea that human desire is fundamentally imitative. According to Girard, this pattern extends far beyond individuals. Entire societies can become trapped in escalating cycles of imitation, competition, and violence until they reach the brink of collapse. So how did ancient civilizations restore peace? Girard believed they almost always found a scapegoat. One person or one group would be blamed for the community's problems. Once that victim was expelled, sacrificed, or destroyed, social unity temporarily returned. The violence itself wasn't eliminated. It was redirected. According to Girard, Christianity revealed this hidden mechanism by telling the story from the innocent victim's perspective instead of the crowd's. In Girard's view, once humanity recognized the scapegoat for what it truly was, the old way of containing violence could never fully work again. History itself had changed. According to Girard, once the scapegoat mechanism was exposed, societies could no longer restore unity through the old cycle of blame and sacrifice. In his view, humanity was left searching for new ways to prevent conflict on an ever larger scale, a search he believed would shape the modern world. For Peter Thiel, this wasn't merely an interesting philosophical theory. It became a lens for understanding politics, economics, technology, and even the internet. Thiel has pointed to social media as a massive engine of mimetic desire, a place where billions of people constantly compare themselves to one another, imitate each other's wants, and amplify rivalry on a global scale. But Girard's influence went much deeper than explaining human behavior. It shaped the very way Peter Thiel came to understand the Antichrist. According to Thiel's interpretation, the greatest danger isn't a dictator who rises through obvious evil. The greater danger is a leader, or even an entire system, that promises peace, safety, and unity by persuading humanity to surrender more and more freedom in the name of preventing catastrophe. That belief would eventually become the foundation of Peter Thiel's warnings about artificial intelligence, global governance, and the future of civilization. And nowhere does he believe that danger is more visible than in the rapidly advancing world of artificial intelligence. Chapter 3: AI, Global Power, and the End Times. If René Girard gave Peter Thiel the philosophical framework, artificial intelligence gave him a modern battlefield. For Thiel, AI is not simply another technological breakthrough. It represents one of the greatest turning points in human history. Unlike many technology leaders who speak almost exclusively about AI's benefits, Thiel has repeatedly warned that the real danger may not be the machines themselves. Instead, he argues that the greatest threat comes from how humanity responds to the fear those machines create. Throughout history, civilizations have faced moments of existential crisis. Wars, famines, economic collapse, and pandemics have all forced governments to make extraordinary decisions. According to Thiel, artificial intelligence has the potential to create another crisis unlike anything the world has ever experienced. If people become convinced that AI could destroy civilization, what would they be willing to sacrifice in exchange for safety? That question sits at the heart of Thiel's interpretation of biblical prophecy. He argues that fear has always been one of the most powerful forces in politics. When people believe survival itself is at stake, they often become willing to accept restrictions that would have been unthinkable during ordinary times. In Thiel's view, the greatest danger isn't artificial intelligence becoming evil overnight. The greater danger is humanity using AI as the justification for creating an unprecedented level of centralized authority. Imagine a world where every nation agrees that AI must be monitored by a single global organization. Every advanced computer, every powerful algorithm, every financial transaction, every digital identity, and every communication network becomes subject to one unified system designed to prevent catastrophe. To many people, that might sound like responsible global cooperation. To Peter Thiel, it raises a much darker possibility. Drawing from passages such as 1 Thessalonians, where Paul warns that sudden destruction comes when people proclaim peace and safety, Thiel argues that history's greatest deceptions may arrive disguised as humanity's greatest solutions. This is why he believes the biblical concept of the Antichrist should not necessarily be understood as a monstrous dictator who conquers the world through fear alone. Instead, he suggests the greatest danger may be a system that promises peace, security, and the prevention of disaster. A system so convincing that people surrender their freedoms voluntarily because they believe there is no other choice. Whether one agrees with Thiel's conclusions or not, his warning forces an uncomfortable question. Could humanity's desire to prevent catastrophe become the very thing that reshapes civilization forever? That question becomes even more complicated when we examine the company Peter Thiel himself helped build. Chapter 4: Palantir, Prophecy, and the Critics. Peter Thiel's warnings about centralized power have led many people to ask an obvious question. If he believes a future global system could become the greatest threat to human freedom, why is he the chairman of one of the world's most powerful data and artificial intelligence companies? That company is Palantir. Founded in 2003, Palantir develops software that helps governments, intelligence agencies, militaries, and large organizations analyze enormous amounts of information. Its platforms can identify hidden patterns, connect seemingly unrelated data, and assist decision makers during everything from military operations to disaster response. Supporters argue that these tools save lives. They point to counterterrorism efforts, battlefield intelligence, fraud detection, and emergency planning as examples of technology making the world safer. Critics see something very different. They argue that software capable of collecting, organizing, and analyzing vast amounts of personal information could also become one of the most powerful surveillance systems ever created. That criticism has followed Palantir for years. For some observers, the contradiction is impossible to ignore. How can someone warn about centralized technological power while helping build technology that gives governments unprecedented access to information? Peter Thiel rejects the idea that these positions are incompatible. He argues there is a crucial difference between governments defending their citizens and a single global authority exercising control over the entire world. In his view, decentralized nation-states create competition that protects liberty, while a unified global system eliminates the checks and balances that prevent tyranny. Whether that distinction ultimately holds is the subject of intense debate. Some believe Thiel is sounding an important warning about the future. Others argue that the technologies being developed today could eventually make the very system he fears technically possible. That debate has only intensified as artificial intelligence has advanced and governments around the world have sought greater coordination on issues ranging from cybersecurity to AI regulation. As Peter Thiel's ideas spread beyond Silicon Valley and into universities, conferences, and even religious institutions, they attracted both devoted followers and outspoken critics. The discussion was no longer confined to technology. It had become a debate about theology, politics, and the future of civilization itself. And that leaves one final question. After years of studying prophecy, warning about centralized power, and challenging conventional thinking, what should we make of Peter Thiel's vision of the future? Chapter 5, is Peter Thiel seeing the future or misreading prophecy? After examining Peter Thiel's ideas, one thing becomes clear. This isn't the story of a billionaire making a few controversial comments. It's the story of a man who has spent years developing a worldview that connects theology, philosophy, technology, politics, and artificial intelligence into a single framework. Whether you agree with him or not, his ideas challenge some of the biggest assumptions of the modern world. Thiel argues that history is driven not only by economics or politics, but by human nature itself. Fear, imitation, rivalry, and the desire for security have shaped civilizations for thousands of years. In his view, those same forces are now colliding with technologies more powerful than anything humanity has ever created. Artificial intelligence is advancing at an extraordinary pace. Governments are debating regulation, nations are competing for technological dominance, companies are investing hundreds of billions of dollars into systems that could reshape nearly every aspect of daily life. Against that backdrop, Peter Thiel asks an unusual question. Could humanity's greatest danger come not from artificial intelligence itself, but from the political and social systems built to control it? Not everyone agrees. Many theologians reject Thiel's interpretation of biblical prophecy. Many political scientists believe stronger international cooperation is necessary to address global risks. Others argue that advanced AI may require forms of coordination never before attempted in human history. Those debates are likely to continue for decades. But perhaps the most important lesson from Peter Thiel's work isn't that he has all the answers. It's that he is asking questions most technology leaders never ask. How much freedom are we willing to exchange for security? Who should control the technologies that increasingly shape our lives? And if history has taught us anything, could humanity repeat old mistakes using tools more powerful than ever before? Only time will answer those questions. Until then, Peter Thiel's warnings remain one of the most unusual and thought-provoking intersections of technology, philosophy, and biblical prophecy in the modern era. If you enjoyed this documentary and want to see more deep dives into history, technology, religion, and the ideas shaping our future, be sure to like this video, subscribe to the channel, and let us know your thoughts in the comments below. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you in the next documentary.